Welcome to the Steampunk Blogs Hop. Julie here. Thank you for visiting my channel. I'm going to do a little tutorial video about what I am going to make for the blog hop, and I'm so glad you're here. I am going to attempt to make a steampunk coffee sleeve. So what I've got here to work with is some samples of faux leather. I happen to have a sample book from a design company that was getting rid of it, and they come like this. They're all stacked together, they're all glued in. I just ripped them out and I just trimmed all the edges. I'll just trim this one up too with my scissors. I'm going to join it with some eyelets punched in each one and some black cord I have here, and then I'm going to attempt to make a butterfly using these wings and some sheets of metal that I have and a few other bits and pieces here. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I think, is try to measure where to put the holes, because I'm going to put 4 eyelets in each piece of pleather, and I'm thinking that maybe they should try to be as close to even as possible to produce a more even product. We'll see. So I'm not a real big measurer, but I do have rulers, so that's just what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to be putting 4 eyelets in each one and using that to connect them all together. I do own a crocodile to the Big Bite, but I find there's something very relaxing in using a hammer in my craft room. And with this one, I happen to do it, is it 40 times? Is that math right? That's 20 holes and then 20 eyelets. So I'm not real big on power tools, but I do like to use my tiny hammer. My husband laughs because it's so small, but it works great for me. Gosh, look at all those eyelets set. Aren't they so pretty? Okay, so now I'm going to start my first attempt at stringing them together to join them. And I just kind of do a slight measurement here, or guesstimate of how much I'll need, and I'll cut it off. But I think I'm gonna use like an X or a crisscross stitch to join them together. Looks cool. I really did have to spend a couple minutes just thinking about it, trying to work it out in my head before I actually attempted it. So, however, this is just my first attempt. Spoiler alert, this one doesn't quite work out the way I think it's going to. And I don't know if you can tell, but they seem to not lay right because there's no stability behind them. It's just a little too wonky for me. I decided to grab a cup just to see how they will sit on there. You can see there, it's just not right. It just doesn't look good. So that's when I decided to take them apart. And now I've got my really long string, and I'm going to string it up one side and down the other. And this is my second attempt at trying to figure out the best way to string these so that they'll work. Because I want it to be a functioning, cup sleeve. Okay, so here is try number 2, and I get it on the cup, and it's still just not quite right. If I remember correctly, I think one of the pieces just puckered. Instead of laying flat, it just kind of bunched up. Okay, so I'm taking it all apart again, and we're going to start on our third attempt here. So here's the moral of this lesson. Try things until you get it right. Don't give up. There you go. But what I ended up doing is cutting the long string in half and stringing all the way along one side with one string, and all the way along, like one string on the top, one string on the bottom. So there was 2 separate strings through all the pieces. And I get it on there. Seems to be working pretty good, but it doesn't tie straight. It's still crooked. So at this point, I decide the best thing I can do is recycle the cardboard coffee sleeve and glue my piece to it to add a stability layer to it. And I wish I had done that from the start, because it turned out perfect. And not only that, it's a recycling 2 ways, the coffee sleeve and the pleather samples, which I love. So I love recycling. And I'm just going to let that dry really well to make sure it is stuck down, because there's a lot of texture there between the leather and the corrugated cardboard. And I'm going to go ahead and get started on my butterfly. So I'm using this stamp of wings, and I'm going to use only the small wings because of the size of the cup. I don't think there's enough room for the large wings, although that would be really cool. But I'm going to, for the top wings with the butterfly, use the full stamp. And for the bottom wings, I'm going to cut the sides off the stamps, because there are lines there, and it's easy enough to just snip off the pieces I don't need. I'm just using some Ranger archival ink in black to stamp on the metal. And those are just some old pieces of metal I had gotten many years ago, and they just have bummed around here in my craft room, and I'm glad to use them up. They used to be adhesive, but now they just have they're no longer adhesive, but they still have the lining paper on them, so you'll see me peel that off some of them when I glue them down. Okay, I'm hitting them with my heat gun here just to heat set them a little bit so I don't smear it when I touch them, just to speed up my time a little bit. And they're ready to go. So I'm just gonna cut them out and start adhering them to my piece. Kind of excited at this point. I love to see it when it starts to come together and my creativeness starts to come out. Now when you are working with metal and you are cutting it down, it can produce really sharp edges. And also if you're making small cuts, they can become dangerous. So make sure you're putting all your little metal pieces straight into the trash can. Don't sweep them onto the floor or anything like that. Safety first. Okay, you can see me peeling off that backer liner. And I'm just going to use E6000 here to get all my pieces where they are. I need to bend the metal a little bit so it kind of curves around the cup itself. It'll give me more surface area for gluing, and it just makes a nicer finished product. I'm just cutting off the really pointy bits of the wings here so they don't poke too much. We're just going to let things dry and set up for just a minute. I've got this filigree piece that I'm going to add right over the wings, so they're kind of like the second wings for the butterfly. And then I'm going to add that little light bulb for the body and that rhinestone for the head. I am loving how this is turning out. So good. Okay, now I've got this little bar that I'm going to hang off this chain here, and it says found on it. And I've also got this washer that I have stolen from my husband's workshop. Don't tell him. And it's a locking washer, so its prongs are facing up. There's that bar, I've got it on the chain. And I'm going to hammer it down here in a minute. I'm going to use a jump ring and attach it to the chain. Awesome. Then we're just going to add the clip side of the chain to one side of the cord and open the jump ring and attach it to another side of the cord, and we are done. Thanks for watching, y'all.